Hey everybody, welcome to FabFit Friday. I am so sorry. I was having a technical difficulty with my audio and I had to turn my whole computer off and turn it back on. And then I realized that one of my plugs wasn't plugged in right, so we're fixed. And I'm sorry that I'm, yikes, almost 10 minutes late today. I'm really excited about these sew-alongs because I've already gotten a lot of feedback and emails from people. So I have a list of fit adjustments that people have already asked me about. So what we're going to do today is we're going to adjust our pattern for things that we may need before we cut out our tee. And the cool thing about this pattern is it has a unique above the bust seam. Let me just see if I can show you here. Okay, so this is me kind of crooked. Let me see if I can get this to be, be a little bit less crooked. Oh, there we go. All right, so you can see I'm wearing my tee that I've adjusted. Hi, Sally. Sally, I think it's just you and me. I was late getting going because my audio wasn't working. So, oh, hi Francine, welcome. All right, so I apologize that we're starting a little late. I'm showing the above the bust seam detail. So this particular tee is a scooped out version, but it still has the center front and then there's a side front and the seam is right here. Okay, and then there's an above the bust seam in the front. So the pattern has some unique seam detail in the front. In the back, it's got an empure waist seam that connects to the above the bust seams at the side seams. Hi Lonnie. Oh, Lonnie's just joining us. Well, guess what, Lonnie? I just started. I was up almost 10 minutes late today because my audio wasn't agreeing with me for some reason. I think I have to update my OBS and I'm afraid to do it on a day when I have to rely on it to work. So I will be fussing with that over the weekend. So you haven't missed anything. What I was saying was I received a few emails from people looking for specific adjustments for their patterns. Now, this pattern has a boat neck. Let me switch views here so you can see the actual pattern pieces. I'll use my picture-in-picture. Okay, so in the front, let's start in the front. In the front, there is a, okay, the front's got a curved top to it, a center front, and a side front. So these upper pieces go together first on this seam, and then you sew this whole thing to the top of the lower front piece. And if anybody's wondering about fitting, and let's say fitting in darts with knit tops, this pattern is a very fitted top, and the shape comes from the fact that the dart is hiding in the style lines. So if I put this together here, you can see that there's a dart here, okay? And when this dart is sewn up, it brings the lower part of the tee against you and makes it very, very fitted. So I'm going to talk about some ways that you can relax the fit, as well as some bust adjustments and some other things. So I'm just going to get started, and instead of working on big full-size pieces, I'm going to be working on, I printed out some like half-scale pattern pieces, and somebody commented on one of my videos that I should get a half-scale ruler when I'm working with my half-scale pattern pieces, and I think that's a really good idea, so I'm going to investigate that over the weekend as well. So for now, I'm just going to use my regular ruler, and I'm going to guesstimate in terms of the size that we're going to spread. Andrea says this is your favorite pattern. Oh, I'm so happy it's your favorite pattern. It's the first top pattern I ever designed, and it's always so surprising because it continues to be my most popular pattern um, much of the time as well. So I'm really happy to be working with this. All right, so let's start with these top pieces and the neckline. Okay, I want to start with these two pieces. This is our center front and our side, and you may notice that I am only working with half of the pieces. In the misses pieces, anything that's got a anything that goes across the front or back is a full piece. You're going to want to just fold it in half and trace one half of it to do your adjustments, because it's easier to adjust half the pattern and then trace a full new copy after you've done that. So I'm going to be working with halves of my pattern pieces, and then I could make a full piece by tracing it on a folded piece of pattern paper. All right, so that's what I'm going to do as I'm working. And the first thing I want to talk about here is okay, so the lower front piece is a little bit smaller and not in proportion to these upper pieces. So you'll just have to bear with me on that. I just wanted to make them, I wanted to make them in a way where I could show them easily without juggling around big pieces. But what I want to talk about first is we want to make sure these upper pieces are long enough to fit you from your shoulder to the base where this upper bust seam is. We also want to possibly adjust the neckline here. So I'm going to be clicking off a few of the questions I got before the sew along in dealing with these pieces. All right, so the first issue is if you, what you can do is you can measure the edge of your piece. So just to give you an example here, I'm going to take my clear grid ruler, and the reason why I like this clear grid ruler is because I can bend it along the seam and measure it exactly. So this piece measures 7 inches, almost 7 inches, and we're going to take off, let me just draw here for seam allowances, 3/8 of an inch here and 3/8 of an inch here. Okay, so really it's about 6 inches, 6 1/8. All right, so what you can do to decide if this piece is long enough for your body and ending up with this seam hitting you in a good spot. I like to have my above the bust seam hit me approximately, I would say about between 3 and 4 inches above my apex. And the thing about this above the bust seam is it can either be a focal point or it can blend into the fabric. You may be noticing with this print it's not very noticeable, but if you did a color blocking it would be very noticeable. Or if you cut your top out of something that had a directional print and you played with the direction of that print. So to get this above the bust seam in the right spot, compare the length of this with your shoulder and then just measure down that far. Well, actually, let me do it here. So I'm going to go like this, and I'm just going to measure down to where the measurement is. And you can see if I measure me, I'm like 6 3/4 of an inch from my shoulder down to where the seam is. That means I had to add. So the easiest place to add on this pattern is to extend the shoulder. And what that will do is it will drop down this, it'll drop down the above the bust seam that amount. So the easiest thing to do without any slicing and dicing is to, measure this, take out your seam allowances, measure this, compare it to, from your shoulder down to see where that seam will land, and then decide if you need to add. So in my case, I needed to add 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to measure 3/4 of an inch above, and then I'm going to continue this up like this. Okay, so now I've added all of this. Okay, and then the same thing with the center front, because the shoulder seam is split into 2 pieces here. So I'm just going to continue this up. Okay, so that's going to give us an extension to the shoulder seam, and it's going to allow the above the bust seam to drop down a little bit lower. Okay, so that's one adjustment that you can make to get this, I'm talking about this seam right here. Okay, so this seam, or this edge, okay, we want that to drop down a little bit. Or you may actually need to pick it up depending on, you know, how long you are. You don't want this seam to be right on top of your apex. So I would say between 3, 4, 4.5 inches from your apex is a good location. All right, so that takes care of adjusting that. Now, I did not adjust my back shoulder. Okay, so you know, the back shoulder will probably be okay. I very rarely have to adjust the length of that. But what we do want to check is, we want to make sure if you play with your shoulder, or even if you don't play with your shoulder, the next step is you're going to want to put your shoulder seams together. So I'm just going to cut one edge here. All right, and then I'm going to mark my seam allowance. Okay, so there's a 3/8 inch seam allowance, you know, along this edge as well. I'm just going to dash in approximately 3/8 of an inch here. Okay, because when you sew those together, okay, and I'm going to just lay those seam allowances on top of each other. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring in your back piece, and you're going to want to make sure the back piece matches the front. And I'm just going to fold the paper down in the back, and I'm going to line this up like this. Oh, I have it going the wrong way. That's brilliant. All right, hold on one second. I'm going to trace it through so I can have it be going the right way. Both of these pattern pieces are facing to the left, so I have to. All right, so this is, I'm just retracing it here. Okay. All right, so here's the actual pattern piece. All right, so I'm going to fold. Oh, and I'm going to mark my seam allowance too while I'm here. I might as well do that. All right, so I've got my 3/8 inch seam allowance here. And then I also have my 3/8 inch seam allowance here. So I'm going to fold the paper on the seam allowance now. And I'm going to line it up like this. And you can see that after adjusting it, I ended up with a little bit of a discrepancy here. So you can see that my front okay, so my front goes to here and my back goes to here. So I'm going to fill this in a little bit to make the shoulder seams equal. Okay, so that's how you adjust the shoulder seam, or check, oops, I'm sorry, check your shoulder seam to make sure it's going to sew together. So I'm just going to fill this in here. Okay, so that's to get your shoulder seams equal. All right, now another thing that somebody asked me before the sew along was how to bring the shoulder in a little bit because they don't want their bra strap to show. So what you can do for that is, you don't need your side front, you're just going to be dealing with the center front. What you're going to do is you're going to put your ruler, just make this a little bit bigger here. You're going to put it right on the shoulder seam and you're going to extend it. Okay. Then what you can do is you can decide how much you want to add to that shoulder seam at the neckline edge. So let's say we want to add, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch. That'll bring me to here. Okay, so I'm going to do it in the front, and then I'm just going to bring this in, you know, back down to the original neckline, like this. Something like that. And that will give me a, you know, a little bit of a wider shoulder so your bra strap doesn't show. But if I do that in the front, this is the front neckline, I also have to do it to the back. Okay, so what I'll do is I will continue the edge of the shoulder. I'll go up that 3/4 of an inch, and I'll fill it in. Okay, so in the back, it's going to be a little bit more dramatic. It's going to look like that. Okay, so now I've added all of this. Just going to color it in. But you can see that that's going to change it from a boat neck to a more of a crew. And if I fold down the seam allowance and check it, you can see that that matches up pretty nicely. Okay, so if I were to color this in as well. Okay, so we're adding all of this fabric here. Okay, so that's going to bring in the neckline. All right, does anybody have any questions about that? And also, if you're watching me and you have questions about something you're concerned about in terms of adjusting the T pattern, please ask them, because I can, you know, I'll show any sort of adjustments that anybody needs as well as the ones on my list here. Okay, but you can see here now, that change matches, and on the misses, you'll see that if we take apart, don't worry about what's going on over here, because remember, we didn't add this back in yet, but if we wanted to see the whole entire shoulder lining up, the whole entire thing, you can see it still matches. Okay. All right, so that's how you adjust the shoulder and make a longer shoulder seam from the neckline edge. Okay, so that's that adjustment. Now the next thing that can happen, and it's a pretty common adjustment in this pattern. This pattern, I designed this pattern, my very first pattern ever. So on some people, I've noticed that the neckline can gape away from you a little bit. Oh, okay, hold on one second. Andrea's asking me, okay, so Andrea's asking, how does a round back adjustment be done, or does it depend on the neckline? Okay, so a round back adjustment is done to the back piece, and I'll show you that. But if you do a round back adjustment, then you're going to have a center back seam, because it will curve this center back seam. So you can have a center back seam on the upper part of the back, and then finish with the full lower back. I'll get to that in a minute, Andrea. Okay, so Sally's saying, I may need to do a forward shoulder adjustment. How would you do that? And would I do that before making the adjustments to the front length? All right, so Sally, that's a good question. I would first make sure you have enough length in your pattern piece. And then the seams on this the seams on this tee do sit a little forward. Even with the adjustment, they're not quite on my shoulder. They're a little bit forward, and I designed it that way. So if you need to bring those shoulder seams back, do that after you've adjusted for positioning your above the bust seam. And if you need to do a forward shoulder, meaning you need to push the shoulder seam back because it's too far forward, what you're going to do basically is you're going to add to the front and you're going to take away from the back. Okay, so like let's say you needed to push this back a half an inch. That would mean you would take off a half an inch over here after you've gotten the length right. So one way that you can do that pretty easily is if I cut off the amount I need to add to the front from the back, then I can just tape it onto the front. So I'm going to take that little bit that I needed, I cut off the back, and I'm just going to tape it right onto the front like this. And that way I know that the shoulder seams are still matching because I took the edge of the back off and then I didn't tape it on right. Hold on. Let me make sure I tape it right. So since you have to cut it off anyway, if you just cut it off the back and put it onto the front, then you can see everything still lines up. So that's how you would do a forward shoulder if you mean that you want to push the shoulder seam back because it's too far forward. Another kind of forward shoulder adjustment is if the ball of your shoulder, if the ball of your shoulder is forward on your body, then you would actually do the opposite. So if anybody is sitting here watching me and they know that the ball of their shoulder comes forward, you would actually shorten the front and lengthen the back. So please let me know if anybody has any questions about adjusting a pattern if their ball of their shoulder is forward. That makes the back longer. You have to have a longer back to get it around to where where the center of the shoulder is. So that's a little bit, that's just the exact opposite. I would cut off the front and tape it to the back. All right, so let me just finish with the neckline here. Okay, so this neckline is very modest. There's no cleavage showing. If you think about it, this seam is above your bust. So to have the round, the neckline where it is, it's pretty high up. So you could change the style of the neckline. You could make it into a V-neck. You could scoop it like I did here and make it more open. You can really play with the shape of the neckline, and it's really easiest to do if you're working with half like this, because then you could just put this on a folded piece of paper and make a full front. If you have narrow shoulders and you have the common, the problem of having your front necklines gaping away from you, you can contour this neckline to get rid of some of the length on the actual neckline. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to create 2 slash marks that radiate from center front to the shoulder. So they're at a slight angle. So the first one I'm going to draw approximately a half an inch from center front to approximately an inch from center front. So it's going to look like this. Okay, and then I'm going to move over just a little bit and I'm going to make another one like this. So I've made 2 guidelines here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to slash and overlap them slightly to take out some of the excess in the neckline. So I'm literally going to slash through this line down to the bottom, but not through the bottom. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. All right, and what that's going to allow me to do, it's going to allow me to overlap these pieces just a little bit. And I mean like a quarter max. So between an eighth and a quarter, okay, I'm moving it, like, so say, let's say I'm going to overlap it to here. Okay, so that's going to take it in a little bit. And then the same thing, I'm going to do the same thing with the second one here. I'm going to overlap it just a little bit, like to there. Okay, so now what I've done is I've taken it in that little bit, and that will prevent the neckline from gaping away from you. And then if the shape of your neckline is screwed up, you can just true it back up. Okay, so just find a nice smooth curve. Now, if you're going to change the amount of scoop you have, let's say you wanted the neckline to be a little bit lower like what I'm wearing. Okay, I have approximately an inch between the above the bust seam and the curve, the neckline curve. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to decide how low you want to make your scoop, or whatever shape. I mean, you could really make any shape neckline you wanted to here. But you're going to start out by drawing a line that's perpendicular to the center front. The reason why you want to do that is because if you're making any sort of scoop, you want the center part at the center front, you want that to be perpendicular, so when you open it up, it continues to look like a curve. If you come in too hot or too pointy, it'll start to look like a V. So I'm drawing this line right here, and then if you just want to lower it, you can connect it to the original shoulder. So like in a different color here, you know, I could do this, and then I can just come right back to the original like this, and that would make a low skinny scoop. Another option is you could also, you know, bring it in a little bit too if you wanted to. You could come in, you know, and then you could even come back out a little bit if you wanted to. You know, whatever you want to do here, just remember then you have to bring in your back and fix it to match. So see, then I would connect this aqua line like this. Can you see that? But if you change, if your front neckline changes the length of your shoulder, you have to go back in and fix the back to match. All right, so that's how you play with the neckline. Francine says, hi Diane, welcome. Francine says, where should the seam of the side front and center front be on the body? I think that part is a bit too large on me. Okay, so the seam between the side front and the center front should approximately be above your apex. So, you know, if you were to measure, like let's say you were to measure your side front from your side seam, you know, across, you know, that'll kind of tell you where that is. You can take it in there, or if the center front piece is too wide, you can take it in there. Another option is, Francine, you could actually use two different sizes and blend them. So if you wanted to cut out a size smaller up for the top pieces, you could do that. You know, maybe the top pieces in the sleeve, and then, you know, sort of true them up on the under, you know, on the side seams for the lower bodice pieces. You could do that. Let me know if that helps you. But basically, if it works out that your center front is too big, you can use this contouring method to draw it in too, like I just showed you. And if you did a 1/4 inch on each one, that would be a whole inch across the center front, because it'd be a 1/4 here and a 1/4 here, and then that would be a 1/2 inch, and then when you opened it up, you'd have a 1/2 inch over here too. So that's a good way to draw in this, you know, the center front, and that could take up some of that. But basically, this seam should be, you know, approximately right above your apex, somewhere in that general area. Francine, let me know if that answers your question or if you need more help with that. Now I just want to show you how to do a full bust adjustment, And the full bust adjustment has nothing to do with this messy front that I made. I'm gonna just cut it out so it looks a little neater in a scoop neckline here, so you can see. All right, so here was the original scoop I did. Okay, so I'm just gonna move that out of the way for a minute. For the full bust adjustment, I have a G cup, and what I found that worked really well for fitting this pattern is to, if you need to go from, let's say, a C to a D, I would do approximately, well, from the original pattern, I had to do 3/4 of an inch twice. Okay, and what I found was, if you have a large bust, like I do, you're going to need to do a full bust adjustment on the misses sizes. On the women's sizes, I already added to the bust, so you may not need to do a full bust adjustment if you're working with the women's size. But if you're working with the misses size, I highly recommend doing a 3/4 inch adjustment and see how it fits. And then if you need more room, then you can do that adjustment a second time on your trued up pieces, because that's what mine has. Mine has 2 3/4 inch full bust adjustments, because back when I designed this pattern, I was a very small C cup. I was very thin. So now to make room for it, it will need a full bust adjustment if you're a D plus cup. So let me show you how to do that. And again, these pieces are not proportional. I'm wondering if that's going to be yucky. Let me just see. All right, so I'm going to cut this off here. And I'm just going to make this, okay, so this front piece should be fitting, it should fit, yeah, this is not going to work. We're going to make it bigger. I'm sorry, I thought I had this brilliant idea to make these smaller pieces. I'm just going to redraw. We're going to use the blue here. Okay, so this entire piece is going to be the lower front because it's just too small. Let me show you what the completed full bust adjustment looks like. Alright, so this is what we're going to be doing. Let me just show you this first. Okay, so to do a full bust adjustment, we're actually going to be slashing the side front piece and the lower front piece. And again, you can see the tissue here. I worked with half, and then I traced a full copy to get the full copy back after I adjusted this. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, let's put this back. Okay, so what we want to do, let's pretend that this black line is in line with the seam. Okay, so here's our seam for the upper side piece, right? And then we're going to pretend this is where it matches up to. Okay, but the pattern piece continues on to the end of the paper. All right, so this is the basic shape. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to line up the lower piece so that it sews together. So you can see from here, this edge matches. Okay, so this seam is this blue line is approximately where that seam is going to be. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure down 2 inches on my lower piece, and that's going to be somewhere in the curve. So you can see here, let me just put the screen here so you can see. This is the top edge of the pattern. Okay, so you're going to measure 2 inches down from the center front, and it's going to put you somewhere over here like this. somewhere in this curved section of the lower front piece. So you need that line, and then from, you know, where the notch is at the front armhole, you're going to make a diagonal line to that apex as well. And you're going to draw it straight through both pieces like that. Okay, so, oh, actually that's not lined up. Hold on, I'm sorry. Now I'm making a mess. So make sure it's lined up. Diagonal line like this, sorry. Okay. So you need this diagonal line and you need this horizontal line going through the lower front piece. So what you're going to do with the lower front is you're going to cut this off. Okay. And we are going to spread these two pieces the amount of the adjustment. So let's say we are going to spread this lower front piece the 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so if you have a D cup, I would just spread it, let's say 3/8. And for every cup size above D, I would just add like an 1/8. So by the time I got to G, I was at 3/4 approximately. Well, I had to do 3/4 twice. But the thing is, depending on your knit, you know, adjusting your full bust, I think if you have a D plus cup and you do 3/4 of an inch, that's going to be a good first try, and then you can see if you need to add more. All right, let me just stop here. Hi, Diana. I have 5-inch difference between my high bust and my full bust. How do you know how many inches to make the adjustment? Okay, so what I would do, if you have that much of an adjustment, you're going to use your full bust to pick the pattern size, because that's how I did it. So use the full bust to pick the pattern size, and then you're definitely going to need to contour the neckline in like I showed previously. Oh, you want to know, okay, so you're talking about if you're making a shirt out of not a knit. So you have a 5-inch difference. Typically, okay, so I think if there were 3 or more inches difference between your high bust and your full bust, that puts you in a D plus cup size, because I have a woven shirt pattern, and I have the formulas for figuring out how to pick your cup size based on how your high bust and full bust, you know, how different they are. So let me know if that answers you or if you need help. But basically for this tee, I would pick out the full bust that fits you, and then I would contour in that neckline to take in some of that. All right, so here I've added my 3/4. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do so I don't lose all my pieces is I'm going to tape back that piece that I'm just going to put it here for now because I have this short post-it note. So I've added my 3/4 inch here. Okay, then what I'm going to do, wait a minute, is that my piece? No, where's the, did it blow? Where's the piece I cut off? This is definitely not the piece I cut off. What did I do with the piece that I cut off? Oh, here it is, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going to cut on the diagonal line here, and I'm going to tape this piece back like this. Okay, so I've added my 3/4 of an inch there. Then what I'm going to do, and actually I can add it, I'm going to put a second post-it note right next to it here. Okay, so let's bring back our upper piece. The next step, well, let me finish with the lower piece actually. So then I'm going to measure 3/4 of an inch this way too. So from that slash to here, and then I'm going to tape this back on. And let me just make the 3/4 go all the way across. Here, I'm sorry. All right, so there's my 3/4. I'm taping that on, back on. Okay, so you can see what's happened now is I have spread the lower piece. I have spread it 3/4 of an inch this way and 3/4 of an inch this way. Okay, and then you can see here I have a truing up thing to do over here. I'm going to leave that for a minute because we're going to have to compare what the upper front measures versus what the lower front measures. So there will be some truing up here, and we'll get to that in a minute. But just to recap, I cut this off. I cut on the diagonal line that I drew when I had the two pieces. Let me just cut this off. Okay, so let's put it back so you can see what I did so far. Okay, so when I cut the diagonal line that I drew across, spread that 3/4, I spread this 3/4, and then I taped it back on. Please let me know if anybody is not going with me on this. Okay, so I'm just going to put this aside for 1 second. Over here, I'm going to slash on the diagonal line to, but not through the armhole, and I'm also going to spread that 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to go like this. I'm going to spread it the 3/4 like this. Okay. Okay, so you can see now we've spread this 3/4, and it has a truing up thing to do, and we've got this. So this is what our two pieces look like right now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to true this up. Just going to sort of split the difference here a little bit and just going to cut this. Just going to cut this off like that. So here's our fixed upper piece. Here is our lower piece. Okay, the final step is we need to make sure that this is going to sew back together. So I am going to measure from my seam, not from the edge, but from the seam, the length of that, and that's 6 inches from the edge to the seam. Then I'm going to measure from the line that matched down 6 inches, and you can see what happens here. I'm going to have to lengthen my lower front piece a little bit. So I'm just going to hold my ruler here, and I'm just going to dash in a little thing. So now my lower piece has to be extended this much. Okay, and sometimes it'll even go past the original side seam. So you can just match it up like that. So that's how you true up the side seam. Okay, sometimes you, depending on your shape and your size, sometimes you might need to, extend the side out a little bit, and sometimes you might not have to, depending on your shape. But you want to make sure that the length of this matches the length of this when you do the full bust adjustment. Okay, so please let me know if anybody has a question about how to adjust their pattern. Let me cut this out so you can see. Okay, so see, now the shape looks like this. And here is my piece that matches it. Okay, so please let me know if anyone has questions with the full bust adjustment. Hi, Shea. Oh, did I buy my new embroidery machine? Yes, I did. It's right here. See, there it is. And actually, if you want to check out my, I did 2 videos already. I did an unboxing video, and I did a quick start embroidery video. They're you know, they're in my, you know, they're on my channel. Look for the darker blue colored thumbnail. I will be adding another video this weekend. And just so you're aware, Sundays are going to be embroidery Sundays. I did not do a video last weekend though, because I was teaching at Stitches at Home all weekend and I didn't have time. So I will be uploading something fun this Sunday for the embroidery machine. So I hope you will enjoy that. That's going to be fun. Alright, so so let's just recap so far. I showed how to lengthen the shoulder to get the seam in the right spot. I showed how to change the length of the shoulder seam. We talked about forward shoulder, forward ball of shoulder. One thing, if you lengthen, I'm looking at this now, if you lengthen your shoulder here and you're not making a sleeveless version, meaning you're going to add your sleeve, you're going to want to make a like adjustment to your sleeve. Okay, so if you added here, you're going to have to add to the cap as well. So this is 3/4 of an inch. So we would need to add 3/4 of an inch to the sleeve. So let me just show you how to do that. I'm going to draw a horizontal line, like right at the notches. Like there's no notches on this pattern, but something, you know, like that. Those are my notches. I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to raise it half the amount of the total adjustment because I didn't change the back. If I lengthen the back as well, you want to add the total amount you lengthened your armhole basically. It's only 3/4 of an inch in the front, so I'm going to just measure half that, which is 3/8, like this. And then I'm going to stick that back on. Okay. And then the notch on the sleeve may need to move a little bit. But basically there isn't any real excess ease in this sleeve. It basically goes together almost 1-to-1. So if you start, I'll show you how to deal with that when we go to construct the sleeve. But basically you want to make sure you have an equal sleeve cap to your armhole. Okay, so if you add it to your shoulder, so I added all of this, right? Half of that is here and half of it is here. I know Mary made a tee and she had drag lines under her bust. And I think didn't we talk about that because we needed a lot of ease so you could have room for stuff under. Oh, they disappear if you raise your arms. Mary, let me think about that. Did it also disappear if you took in the side seams? I think when we talked about it, you said that they disappeared if you took in your side seams too. I mean, having, you know, if you have excess ease. All right, so look at, okay, so look at my, I'm going to go to my bigger picture here. Okay, so, all right, so here's another thing to think about. Okay, I have little black shorts on. I don't want you guys to think I don't have pants on. I have little black shorts on. All right, so let's look at this for a second. If you're working with a knit and the way the tee fits you is that this fabric is stretched to its max, what can happen is when you go under your bust, what might happen is you might have excess fabric here because this is stretched to the max and all of a sudden it's released. So sometimes that causes a problem under your bust that way. Another thing is if you have too much ease here, like I'm going to show you how to add ease in this area. Let me just stand up so you can see. Okay, I added 4 inches of ease to the pattern to get it to fit me like this, so it sort of skims and doesn't suck onto my belly. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that, but if you have too much ease, you will get fabric draping off of your bust, below your bust. Okay, so Mary's has a different problem going on because she doesn't have any stretch. I'm gonna have to think about her her drag lines. It's literally, it goes, I remember the picture, Mary, it goes from her bust diagonally down to the hem. She has like 2 folds of fabric that hang off her bust. I think one of the ways to fix that is to take in the lower front piece, but if you want it to be loose, I'm gonna have to think on that for a minute. So let me think on that. And here's another thing I want to talk about. When you're, and I can't remember if I talked about it last week. When you're picking out your size, I would definitely consider how much stretch your fabric has. Okay, so if you want your tee to fit you on your bust without being really stretched, what I would do is compare your full bust measurement to the actual pattern piece, and where you're going to measure that, you're going to just measure across here, and then you're also going to measure across the top piece, because that's basically where your full bust, you know, is going to be approximately there. Let me just get my big back piece here. Hold on. Lower back. No, that's not it. Hold on. Well, I guess it could be the top of this one. It really doesn't matter. Oh, did I lose my back piece? Oh, here it is. All right. Okay, so if you were to measure from here across this is the lower back piece. I'm just going to measure across there, and in my pattern I get 17.25. So really that's going to be 16.5 after seam allowances. So this is 16.5. And then I'm going to measure my the upper edge of my lower piece. So half of it is 11. So we'll say 22 minus 3/4 is 21.25. Okay, so this is 20. So 21.25 plus 16.5 is giving me 37 inches. Okay, so my pattern on the full bust measures approximately 37 inches. So the way I figure out my stretch, or how it's going to fit me across my bust, so let me just get my fabric. All right, so I'm going to use, I may use this fabric. I may try to find something that I can play with direction. I can't play with direction on this because it's a symmetrical dot. But what you want to do is you want to measure how much your fabric stretches. So I'm just going to take a 10-inch piece. I think I did show you this last week, but I want to talk about it one more time. So if I can easily stretch it, 2 inches without a visible change in the print or the weave of the knit, that means for every 10 inches of my bust adjustment, this fabric can stretch 2 inches. So my full bust measures 44, so that means let me just do the math here. 44 minus 37 and 3/4 is 1/4. 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6. 6. It's 6¼ inches different. So my pattern is 6¼ inches different across my bust than my body. So for every 10 inches, well, there's let's say 3.5. So 2 inches for every 10 inches, because I can stretch this easily 2 inches. So that works out to be perfect for me, because in 30 inches, I know it will stretch 6 inches. Does that make sense? And it's not stretching to the max. I can stretch this fabric like 5 inches. But do I want it stretched really wide or really hard across my bust? No, I do not. So I would recommend, if you're concerned about the fit of the bust, measure across the top pieces of the size that you cut out. So again, you're going to measure across here, and then across, the lower. You could do either the lower or the upper. It doesn't matter. They're the same measurement. Across the back, add those up, take out the seam allowances, and then see how much your knit stretches, and see how much smaller the pattern is to your bust. Because if you have a knit that only stretches 1 inch for every 10 inches, this would be way too tight for me. Okay, so you want to make sure you're using a knit that has 25, ideally 25%, because then I still calculate it on a 2-inch stretch. I don't stretch it the total 25%. Does that make sense? So that's part of fitting knits, is figuring out how much you really want the knit to stretch. Okay, I don't want my knit to stretch to the fullest amount that it can, because then it will look too tight, and certain prints will distort. And I'm watching myself on camera, and even though I stretch it a lot, I mean, the dots do get slightly more apart, but they don't look really distorted. But on some prints, if you stretch it really hard, you're going to distort your print, and you don't want that. So as you're testing the knit for stretch, watch what it's doing when you stretch it. Okay, so let me know if that helps. Let me know if that helps in terms of fitting the bust area, not having it be too tight. Okay, so Mary says, I will try putting it on later and pinning in the side seams a bit. This is a very soft, nice knit. Yes, I do remember the picture, Mary. I was all excited. Mary won a t-shirt. Oh no, she got a t-shirt pattern because she made warm hats for all, and that's what she used her $10 coupon code for. So I remember that very clearly. So Mary, just keep in touch with me. I'll help you. If pinning in the side seams does not help, we'll think of something else. All right, so I've taken care of fitting the top, changing the sleeve if you add to the shoulder length, the armhole length, doing a full bust adjustment. Really, there's only a couple other things that you may want to do with this pattern. So let me just show you the front and back. I'm going to switch to the small pieces now. Okay, so this is what the front and back looks like. And the thing about the front and back is, well, the front's easy to tell. I'm sorry, the back is easy to tell because the top of the back piece is a straight line. The top of the front is curved, and so is the hem. So make sure you have it, top side up when you cut it out if it's a directional print. Make sure you've got, the top marked. Okay. I have tried to sew it together upside down. That's the only reason why I'm mentioning that. Now, if you want to relax, okay, before you decide if you want to relax the fit, the first thing you're going to want to do is I would measure from your center back. Let me just get the back piece here. All right, so here's my back. I'm just going to fold it like this. Okay. You can see it's not quite to proportionate, but basically if you measure from your center back, to, the length you want, okay, and then you want to make sure that your waist is in the right spot. If the waist is not in the right spot, you can bring that up or down. Also, if the pattern is too long for you, this is a very long pattern. I'm anticipating that some of you are going to want to shorten this pattern. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring it up at the waist. So on the pattern, there is a waist, there is a line printed on the pattern, and it's printed, at the smallest part of the pattern pieces. So what you're going to want to do is, decide if you need to shorten your pattern, shorten it before you decide if you need to add ease to it. And the reason why I'm saying that is, if you shorten the pattern, you're going to be bringing up the wider part, and you're going to be bringing up that wider hem. Okay, so always shorten before you add ease. Now, I don't think anybody is going to have to lengthen it unless you want to make it into a tunic or a dress, because it's a very generous length pattern. I have a very long torso, and it fits me fine, so it's mostly likely that you're going to need to shorten it. So you can decide how much you want to shorten, and then you're just going to slash on the line and overlap. So I'm just going to slash on this line. So let's say we're shortening it 1/2 inch. Okay, and then you can see what happens is, I'm just going to line this back up. We're getting rid of that extra length, and you're also drawing up the wider part of the pattern. Okay, so, and if you shorten the back, you have to shorten the front as well, because remember, the side seams need to match. Okay, so I'm just going to shorten those both. Okay, so that's the first thing. Get it to be the right length. All right, the next thing is, if you want to add ease, you have a few options. If you do not have a defined waist, the first thing I would do is connect the side seams from the original top and bottom and just make them straight, because that will give you a nice flowy shape. Okay, so, and it will also give you some more ease through here, especially if you have a belly. Like, I straightened my side seams a little bit so they didn't come in at the waist where I didn't have a waist. So you can do that. That's one thing you can do. Okay. Another thing you can do is you can slash and spread. Now, it's really easy to slash and spread and make too much ease, and that's, I think I showed you that last week on my pattern. This pattern I had slashed, and I had opened each one. I can't remember the original amount, but then I had to go back in and shut them because they were too spread out. So even though these look like they're overlapped, it's because I had spread them way too much. Okay, so I ended up having to bring them back in a little bit. So I think a good start point is, if you add an inch, first check your hip, first check your hip measurement. So if you measure across your hip area, down here, and compare it to your body measurement, that will tell you how much you need to add. You want to divide that number by 4 because you've got a half in the front and a half in the back, so whatever you do to these pieces is going to be doubled. So let's say you wanted to add 4 inches, and that's the amount that I added. So all you have to do is slash your pattern right down the center and spread it. I think I mentioned this last week. I did a test because when I first started teaching this class, I would make multiple slash marks and then I would divide the total that I was going to do each half by that, and I'd have all these little spreads because I thought you had to spread evenly across the pattern to get it to hang nice, and that is not true. If you want to see my test for that, I did a video called Does Ease Need to Be Evenly Distributed? The answer is no. So all you need to do to add ease is, let me show you on the back for a second. I want to show you something different on the front. Okay. So I'm going to just slash this right on the line, up to the top but not through the top, and then I'm just going to spread it the amount I need. So if I wanted to add 4 inches, I would spread each piece 1 inch, and that would add up to 4 inches total. So I am just going to spread that the inch and tape it down. Now, doing it this way will add a tiny bit all the way up to the top of the pattern. So just notice here, as I go up, you can see it's adding all the way up to the top. Now, if the top of your pattern already fits great and you really just need it down lower, there's another way that you can do it, and I'm going to show you on the front. But this is how to add it all the way to the top. And then here, let's say on your front, the top pieces fit, your bust fits, you know, it fits, you just need more room for your hips. What you're going to do is you're going to do more of an L-shaped adjustment. And basically, we want to keep the center front straight. So I am going to use a different color. I will draw a line like right around where the waist is. And then we'll draw, well, we can try it with 1. I might want to do 2 with this. But basically, what you're going to do is you're going to, I'm going to slash through the front to the side, and then I'm going to slash up here, and I can pivot. This is going to stay the same, but I can pivot this out like an L shape. Oops, a minute. So actually, this is going to stay straight. I'm going to just tape that back right here. And then see what I can do with this L is I can bring it out like this, and that's just going to add ease down at the bottom. Because of the way this is cocking like a box top like this would be a situation where I might want to add a few different ones. Like I can spread it a little bit like this, and it's a little bit easier to true it up. So if I had 2 like I have now, let me just show you. So see, then I could open this one a little bit, and I can open this one a little bit, and it's a little less invasive in terms of, you know, truing up the hem. But I do want to talk about the hem. Hold on one second. Let me just get this. So it's, so if I spread that one that much, I'm just going to tape this one down. Okay, and then I'm going to take this one down. Okay, so see what I did was I created room just on the lower part of the pattern. Okay, and it looks like that. Now notice, this is hanging down farther, right? Well, if you need more room here to go over your tummy, let's say, chances are you might need more length to go over your tummy as well. So to true this up, I would just continue that new length all the way to your center front, like that. Okay, so that's how I would do it if you don't need to add any up at the bust area. Because remember, your full bust, you know, depending on how your cup size is going to be, you know, 2 or 3 inches below this above the bust seam. So, you know, your apex is going to be somewhere here, right? So if you don't need extra room there, do it like this. If you do need extra room, you can slash all the way to the top like this, and then so you'd be adding some up here as well. So those are the 2 ways that you can add ease to the pattern. And then I just want to address the one last thing, the high round back, because I believe, who asked me about the high round back? Oh, Andrea asked me about the high round back. Okay, so for the high round back, you're going to be working with that center upper back piece that looks like this. Okay, and I mean, this piece is originally cut on the fold, but if you have a significant curve to your upper back, I think it'll fit much nicer if you add a seam allowance. So the first thing I'm going to do to this to remind myself that I need to add a seam allowance is I'm going to draw that right in. Okay, so now I've got my seam allowance. It's a 3/8 inch. You could do a quarter, you know, if you'd rather. And then what you're going to do is you're going to draw your guidelines from the center front, from the center back to the armhole. And you're probably going to need, you know, 3 or 4 of them. This is different than adding ease at the hem. We're going to be adding ease at the center back to lengthen the center back for your high round curve. Wait a minute, let me just see. Okay, so Mary said, I did that once as a style change. I even the hem out with the front piece because I wanted a flouncier type lower. Oh, you mean this, Mary? Are you talking about this? Or this? This will add a lot of flounciness to your hem if you do this, if that's what you're talking about. Okay. All right, so the reason why I'm doing multiple slashes on the upper back piece is we want to create a curve here that agrees with your curve, and also we want to add length. Okay, so that's why I did multiple. If I just slash one of these lines, like let's pretend I just did one line, you know, through the center back to the armhole, but not through the armhole, see, it doesn't make a very nice shape, right? It kind of makes a severe kind of shape. So if you slash them all 4, and you want to position these guidelines where the curve of your back is. So look at your back and decide how low from the neckline edge you need to create the curve. Okay, because that will help it fit nicer. So I'm just going to do this, and then I'm going to basically try to do it all. It might be annoying. I'm going to cut off the sticky part of the note. That might get annoying. But basically, I'm just going to put some paper underneath, and then I'm going to equally spread them all. Okay, and you can decide the amount that you needed to add and then divide it by 4. So if it's an inch, let's say you want to spread each one 1/4 of an inch. And it's going to give you a nice gentle shape like this. Okay, and this is how you do a high round. And then you'll have the center back seam to maintain that shape. Now here's the thing. I don't know if any of you joined me for the house coat or bathrobe sew along. I showed this adjustment. I mean, actually, I put this adjustment in the pattern. So in my bathrobe pattern, it comes with a high round adjustment already in the pattern. So if you have that pattern and you don't have a curve on your upper back, you can, you can straighten it out by slashing and overlapping until this becomes straight again. But I noticed on my mom, after I made her first one, the neckline was still popping, it was still pulling down in the back, and her hem at the bottom was picking up. So I actually did a second high round on the pattern for her, and now her hem hangs straight at the bottom, and her neckline doesn't pop up on her neck. It lays nice at the base of her neck. So doing this adjustment not only creates a nice fit for your upper back, it also keeps the bottom edge of the pattern from picking up. And because this has an empire waist seam in the back, if you have a high round curve and you don't adjust for it, it'll pull this seam up, so it'll look like it'll look like it'll bow up at the top, and then your hem might also pull up a little bit, in addition to the neckline pulling down. So adding this room will really make the whole back fit nicer. So that's how you do that. So, all right, so I think I covered all of the major things that I can think of that you may need to adjust your pattern. I'm looking at, I don't know if I could show you, let me just see, Mary, this is what I wonder if, let me see if I can change my, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to show you my t-shirt on my mannequin that's smaller than me. Hold on. I have to turn it around here. I just want to get it so you can see. Because it's kind of doing the same thing that your tee did. Let's see if you can see this. I'm going to swing my light around a little bit. And I'm going to turn it to the side. Alright, let me see if you can see. I'm going to switch my camera around so you can see the back of my room. Alright, let me just switch views here. Alright, so all right, Mary, can you see the way that tee, the one with the pink, is hanging on that dress form? I have drag lines hanging from my bust. Okay, and the reason why they're hanging like that on that dress form is that dress form is tiny compared to me. So that's what makes me think that, it may be that your tee is just too big, because I'm getting those almost same drag lines that you have on the dress form, but they're not on me. So, I don't know, I was looking at my tees over in the back of the room there, and I thought to myself, oh, maybe that's what's happening. All right, so Linda says, your adjustments are so very helpful, simple, and quick. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Linda. It's my pleasure. All right, so I think I've covered everything. If I haven't covered something that you need help with, please let me know, and I will help you fit your pattern. So for next week, if you're sewing along with me, like actually sewing along with me, you want to have all your adjustments made. Remember, if you make any adjustments, to then true up or check to make sure the seams still sew together, because if you make adjustments, you want to make sure that the pieces are still the same length. And have everything cut out, because next week we're going to start working on sewing it together. So I anticipate we can probably sew the whole thing together next week. And then what I'll do is we will have a final week where I show you how to do some finishes, neckline finishes, um, or maybe I'll show you how to do a facing. Well, we'll see. I will get a whole lineup. I don't think I can sew the whole tee and show you guys in one episode, so we might have to do this for 2 weeks. So we'll just see how far we get. But next week we'll start constructing our tee, and I'm going to be working with an open neckline, and I'm going to finish the neckline with a facing. So I will be showing you how to do facings. And actually, that brings up a good point. Let me show you one other thing before you go. If you would like to finish your neckline with facings, what you're going to do is you're going to put your center front and your side front together and make it one piece. So see, this is the facing for the top I'm wearing now. And the way I got that was, let me show you. Here's my original front. Here's my original side. What I'm going to do to create a facing is I'm going to mark my seam allowances. I'm just going to mark this. Okay, and then I'm going to cut it off. And then I'm going to mark my seam allowance over here. And I'm going to tape it to it. Okay, so that's how you create a facing so you don't have a double seam. All right, so that is something I am going to show you guys next week. And I will remind everybody how to make it if they didn't watch till the end. But basically you're going to, tape this together and then just make sure it trues up. But that's how you can create a one-piece facing so you don't have double seams on that area. All right, so that's the other thing. So I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you enjoyed this. This was fun for me. Next week we will start sewing. Or, I don't know, put it in the comments if you think you're going to need help cutting out your tee, put it in the comments and I'll start with that next week. If I don't get any comments for how to cut out the pieces, I'll have my pieces cut out. So just let me know that. All right, so anyone watching, if you need help cutting out your pieces, let me know, and we'll start with that next week. If I don't hear anybody tell me they need help cutting their pieces, I'll have my pieces cut out. So that's my final little doodah for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Happy Father's Day. We're all converging at my parents' house so my brother can make my dad go golfing. So that's what we're doing. We're going to hang out with my mom while my brother and my brother-in-law are golfing. So I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you very soon. Check Sunday for another Embroidery Sunday. I'll have a fun project ready to go for that. And then, I'll see you for Fit Tip Tuesday next week too. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for sewing along with me. I really appreciate it. I was really so happy I got so many responses on the poll. And the fact that the pattern's tied, I'm really excited that we can do the raglan too. So anyway, you guys have a great rest of your day. Sally's going to a beautiful cabin all week, so she will be a bit behind. That's okay, Sally, don't worry. You can always catch up with me. Mary's 50th anniversary. Congratulations, Mary. My 12th anniversary is on the 26th, so I will be celebrating, I think that's Thursday. But that is very romantic, Mary. I am so happy for you. Happy, 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 happy anniversary. And really, if any of you are on vacation and you can't keep up with the sew-along, you know that I will help you at your pace. So don't feel pressure. I'm just telling you where we'll be next week. All right, so have a really fun week if you're on vacation. If you're celebrating, congratulations. And I will see you very soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.